Okay, so Zach Wilson's knee injury, a lot of reports are coming out right now as we're walking into the early morning of this Saturday where he's going to get further testing, MRI results, all that. But basically, here's a knee model, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the options that we're looking at, or the outcomes. This is your knee. It obviously bends. There's the kneecap, the patellar tendon. You have the MCL and LCL ligaments on the sides. You have the ACL and PCL in the back. You can kind of see that those both control the tightness of the two knee joints from going forward, backward, side to side. It keeps it really tight. Essentially, think about if you remove the PCL and ACL out of the middle of the knee and you took them out, your knee would kind of slide around a little more. And yeah, it's going to be held in place with the MCL and LCL and the patellar tendon, but it's still going to slide around and you're going to grind down that meniscus, which is why a lot of people need total knee replacements when they tear their ACL and they never get it repaired, because they're going to slowly grind down that meniscus in the middle, the padding of the knee. Now, initial reports were ACL, non-contact injury. A player's running around with the football and all of a sudden they just pull up and literally, instead of taking another step, they just decide to kind of like dive and avoid putting any more pressure on the knee that they just instinctively felt, oh my God, that's the worst pain I've ever been in. Let me just fall. Sometimes they let go of the football. Sometimes players react differently when they feel that unexpected pain. Now, we thought torn ACL because it was non-contact, and he did have his leg locked when he stepped, and your knee typically, when you tear your ACL, you're going left or right. Soccer players can tear their ACL without damaging the rest of the knee sometimes because they do control slides on the field, and then a player might land on the knee and they can pop the ACL without damaging anything else. But NFL players usually helmet to the knee, or a player runs into the knee, or they plant really hard and it ends up snapping the knee. Usually there is a right to left movement when the ACL is snapped. And then you can see the ACL in the back of the knee here. As I'm pulling over, there's only so much give because it's designed to keep the knee joint tight. So when players plant and they stretch the MCL and LCL, depending on which way the knee goes, they'll have damage here or here in the MCL or LCL ligament. That's why you typically have multiple injuries when you tear your ACL at the NFL level. Not to mention when the knee goes left or right, you can see the meniscus is getting pinched. So typically when a NFL player tears their ACL, they damage their MCL and they're stretching the MCL. They're also pinching the opposite side meniscus, and then they tear and snap the ACL. Initial reports were that Wilson didn't tear his ACL, and how would they know that? They would do some tests where they take the knee and they pull on it like this. And if it doesn't slide forward, then that ACL is still there tight and keeping the knee from moving forward like that. PCL would be also going backward. So early reports are that the ACL is intact. We're seeing reports on Twitter on that right now. It's being reported all over. Now, that would indicate that their initial tests of testing the tightness of the knee came back positive in a good sense. Doesn't mean he didn't tear his ACL, because when you tear the ACL, which again you can see in the back of the knee, that goes down the middle and keeps it tight. When you tear your ACL, you can snap it, you can tear it, you can stretch it. And I've torn my ACL. When I tore it, I snapped it in half. It was flopping around like a broken rubber band. But if we use this as the ACL, and here's one knee joint, here's another knee joint, and your knee is like this. If you stretch the ACL enough, it doesn't snap, and you still might get a test that results in like, okay, the ACL is still there. However, it's stretched out to the point where it's useless in a sense. It's not keeping the knee tight anymore. Therefore, you got to have ACL surgery anyway. That could be a scenario. A bone bruise would be where that typical movement happened, but no ligaments were damaged or torn. But that's going to cause trauma to the bones, the bone bruise from moving. Torn cartilage and maybe an MCL tear are also very likely. If I had to guess, based on the report saying his ACL is intact, I mean, we assume that maybe his ACL did not snap, but there still could be some damage to it. But MCL and meniscus tear, very likely. PCL could be the injury. They may have tested the ACL, but the PCL might be the other ligament on the back. And when that's missing, then you have the buckling the other way. So ACL keeps it from sliding forward and left to right. PCL is going to help hold it so it doesn't slide backward. If you walk around without a PCL or ACL, your leg will feel like it's going to buckle. Honest truth is we don't know. Reports will come out very soon. We don't know if it's Mike White season. We don't know if the Jets will trade for Jimmy G. I don't think that'll happen. I think they believe in Mike White, but Salah has ties to the Niners. Maybe, you never know. Stay tuned. I don't really want to predict because it could go 100 different ways. We just don't know. If I had to guess without hearing any of these reports that are saying that his ACL is intact, my initial gut would be that he tore his ACL. It was non-contact. The way he reacted when he stepped, it looked like, oh my God. And he just like almost dove to avoid stepping on it again, putting pressure on the ACL again, or the knee. When you tear your knee, it's so painful, but a lot of times because of the surrounding injuries, not just the ACL tear itself. Swelling rushes to the knee to protect it like bubble wrap, like a cast, like an air cast. Swelling rushes, and then that swelling pushes on the injured parts, causing a whole lot more pain. Didn't seem like he was in the biggest pain in the world. He kind of hopped up, made me think, okay, maybe he didn't tear his ACL. But when you look at it, and if I didn't again hear that people are saying his ACL is intact, I would think ACL damage because of the way his knee was locked straight when he planted. And that usually is where you get that ACL to pop. We will see. Keep you posted. You can bet I'll be live the moment news breaks on this or breaks on anything, because the Fantasy Football Show, we go live whenever there's breaking news. And of course, I'm live Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern. See you on the flip side.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.